Hello, and welcome to Movies We Dig, the podcast about film, antiquity, and everything in between. I'm Christy Vogler.
I'm Elijah Fleming.
And I'm Colin McCormick.
And today is a first for the podcast because we are discussing Lore Olympus, a romance webcomic created by artist Rachel Smythe that was released on Webtoons from 2017 to 2024. That's right, y'all. We read stuff occasionally.
Is this reading?
It's got
There are words. Yeah.
I guess it's like reading subtitles in films, which I do as well. So I'm reading all the time. So helping us to unpack the many relationships and storylines of this modern Greek myth retelling is Erica Hampton, an MA student in the Department of Classics, Archaeology, and Religion at the University of Missouri. Welcome to the show, Erica.
Hi, Yay. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And just so you all know, Erica recently successfully defended her thesis exploring changes made to the myth of Demeter and Persephone in adaptations, both modern and ancient.
Huzzah!
Which probably makes a lot of sense why we invited her to be on the show with us today. And this also isn't the first time you'll be hearing Erica's voice. If you tuned in to our live episode at Camus when we were discussing chaos, Erica kind of gives a sneak peek of this discussion we have about Demeter and Persephone in modern Greek myth retelling. So we're very happy to have you here. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you again for having me.
So I do just want to reiterate, Lore Olympus deals with themes of rape, harassment, abuse, and trauma. So I want to take a moment now to just provide a content warning that those themes will likely be discussed in this episode. So if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe check us out for another episode that doesn't have those themes. I don't know which episode that will be, but just heads up for
Go
this.
Watch our AVP episode.
We talk about toxic masculinity. I don't know.
Yeah, but we don't actually.
And forced birth.
Well, yeah.
That movie is PG, but.
It was PG. But yes, so we always open up with this question to our guest, and I'm going to modify it just a little bit because this is a new piece of media for us. Erica, what is your experience with both webcomics in general and your background with Lore Olympus? And then once you tell us that, can you tell us, do you dig Lore Olympus?
So I hadn't actually read a webcomic before Lore Olympus, and actually I didn't discover it until the first published volume had come out. I was working part-time at the local library and I shelved it and thought, oh my gosh, that looks really cool. I like the art style. And then I grabbed it and snuck off to the break room during my break to devour some of it and continued to do that every chance I could.
Library employees sneaking reads on the job?
So
we'll write you up.
And then when I ran out of space in the printed book, I finally caved and went to a webtoon to read the rest of it. So I definitely would say that I dig it. It was a very fun read all the way through for me. Or read, picture, look at, whatever you want to term it.
Yeah. So I'm going to turn it to my co-host real quick. I want to ask, what's your guys' experience with webcomics and what was your introduction to Lore Olympus? Lige?
Oh my God. I think you guys know that I have never read a webcomic in my life.
What?
Elijah Fleming is in fact 65 years old.
I know, right? It's true. I'm so grumpy and old and I hate fun. So I had to, I struggled. I was like, I have heard about Lore Olympus. I knew about it. I feel like I've seen a lot of the artwork in other places. Like it pops up on Instagram. So I was familiar with it. And then I had seen it in like a bookstore and had kind of leafed through it. But this was the first time that I'd actually started reading it. And I do really enjoy the art. I think it's really fun and interesting. And it's cool that like everybody kind of has their own color. And a lot of times you don't even need a whole lot of words. A lot of the emotion is really wrapped up in a lot of the artwork, which I think is super fun. But once again, it's just not for me. It's not for me, you guys. I'm such an old man and I don't love animation in general. It's not my favorite form of storytelling. So I can appreciate it.
Yeah.
but I don't love it.
I don't know why I didn't assume that your, like, dislike of animation would translate into, like, graphic novels or, like, serialized webcomics,
Are
'cause, like, I
you a
don't know why that
graphic
doesn't.
novels person at all or any of that?
Not really. I feel like
Mm,
my sister has tried. Colin, you have tried. You've given me a
Yeah.
few to read, and it just doesn't stick with me. It's just like not something that I reach for, and it's a
mhm.
personal failing. I
Eh,
It's
accept
just
that.
interesting. It's, like, really fascinating because, like, I feel like newer generations of people find reading to be much more accessible because they have images to work with as well as
Yeah.
just text, and, like, there's people in the world that exist that can't picture things in their mind when they read something. That just has to suck, I'm sorry.
Christy, are you gonna get canceled by the, like, aphantasia community?
I'm sorry. It's the same as people with food allergies. It's like I have a very mild one, but, like, if I couldn't eat cheese or something, I would be
You miss
heartbroken.
Whole population out there is missing out on shrimp and garlic, but
Exactly. All right, Colin, how about
yeah,
you?
I'm a little I have to be honest, I'm, like, so in my head about this one, and I'm actually kind of surprised so far the way the conversation is going 'cause this one is this I've been aware of Lore Olympus for some time now, just by virtue of right, because it goes back to 2017, which I think that was right about when I first started teaching courses on, like, Greek
Mhm.
mythology and things like that. I think, one of our colleague or several of our colleagues, like, it's come into
Mhm.
my periphery multiple
Yeah,
times. I know one of our
definitely.
colleagues has some opinions on this one.
Yes. It's
Yes.
Um,
yes, I do remember that.
and so it's been over the last, I guess, like 8 years now. Jesus, it's been built up and built up and built up, and so I'm coming in with this like massive expectations, both good and bad. Where I'm like,
Mhm.
am I going to love it? Am I supposed to hate it? Like, how is this? Supposed to go through? And then on top of that, there is the added hurdle of I'm a little bit like Elijah on this one, where webtoons or webcomics are just not my thing. And so, in some ways, like downloading webtoons felt like a weird walk of shame.
Yep,
Um,
same.
and so there was a bit of like this medium is already kind of a hard sell. It's been built up immensely. And also truthfully, another like on the genre level, like romance is not a preferred genre of mine. And most of the times I delve into romantasy or YA fantasy, I tend to get hung up. I'm like, why are these people so dumb? But I'm like, these are issues that shouldn't be issues. I want my Star Trek level, like, we will solve the problem with logic, which is probably telling on me. So there's all of this time going on. But as I was sort of both reading through the comic and also kind of poking around on the internet just to see what people were saying, I kind of found myself in this having like almost like deja vu of Twilight,
Mm.
Mhm.
where all right, good. I'm actually really surprised. I was expecting a lot of like, "Huh?" But like
Nope, I
in the
see
same
exactly where you're
I
going with
see it
this. Yep.
100%.
yes of cast your minds back a decade and change
To when I was
to
an undergrad.
right. But I feel like a lot of the kind of conversation, like it has a similar kind of. I will say I think this is a better piece of media than
Yeah.
Stephanie Meyers' Twilight on pretty much
Yeah.
all levels in terms of like writing, production, storytelling, theming, et cetera, et cetera. But I see it going through a similar arc of like hits with a big splash is especially popular, especially with younger audiences, especially with female audiences. And then whenever that happens, inevitably there's inevitable backlash of the
Mhm.
critics, some just being like, this is dumb girl shit, air quotes, some laying out that like there are some actual problems with what is romanticized and how we are romanticizing X, Y, and Z. Like I see a lot of the same kinds of things. There's like as I'm reading through, I'm like, am I actually uncomfortable with the relationship that I am witnessing play out before me? And I think the answer might be yes. And then add on to that the final sort of hurdle for colonism going through this like 100-meter hurdle dash is the Persephone myth is such a like it's been so adapted so many times, so many conversations, so many different ways of cutting it, of readapting it, of reimagining it. And each one comes with its own hurdles and problems and pitfalls. And so that in and of itself is like, I'm looking ahead at a veritable minefield. All that
Yes.
to say, that was a huge runway to say, I'm deeply kind of not ambivalent. I have lots of thoughts, but I would say I maybe dig it, but with like a couple of huge asterisks attached to that. or maybe I don't dig it, but
I think that's what's really interesting about this piece is, like, I think it's provocative, right?
Yeah.
It's
people going.
something. Yeah, they know it, and they're talking about it both for the good, and it's the mixed bag, like, there's no perfect
Right.
bag given to us from
Yeah.
Zeus, right?
Yeah.
It's the mixed bag.
Exactly, and I think that's what kind of puts it over the edge for me, where it's like,
Mhm.
no, it's not a perfect piece of media or a perfect portrayal of romance or relationships or even this myth, but it is at least sort of it provokes sort of thought, and I think it is thoughtful and self-reflective enough that like that puts it like head and shoulders, say, above like Twilight, which is
Yeah.
right. Just go to town on that one for
Well, and at this point, I must admit I was a big Twilight fan for a long time, and, I
Same.
will.
Yeah.
Well, and so I'll also say it sounds like I am the one of the ones that's been most engaged with webcomics, and this goes back for a long time. Like, I remember being in college and going on sites like Manga Fox and stuff to get manga, just like
mhm,
different stories and everything. And I feel like Lore Olympus was one of the first webtoons comics I started reading. I think again because like a student talked to me about it, and I'm like, okay, it seems interesting. I'd seen some artwork
yeah.
here and there, and I will admit I haven't fully finished it. The artwork takes a long time to create, so when breaks happen, I kind of move on. I will say webcomics is my escapism. Like,
Yeah.
I read not only Lore Olympus, I read a ton of terrible romantasy webcomics, all kinds. And, like, Lore Olympus in a lot of the ways is, like, the least offensive because there are some that you're just screaming at them, "Why don't you just talk to each other, please?
Mhm.
Please." I will say there's a lot of good communication being shown in this one, which I know is, like, a low bar to be setting, but there's that. And so, yeah, like, I hate to admit that, like, academia killed my love of reading. I loved reading growing up, and webcomics is one of the few ways that I read all the time. I don't even feel like I count it as reading anymore, but, like, I spent all of today prepping by reading 200 of the episodes,
That's
like,
a
maybe
lot.
150 today, but I've been binging it, and I've been enjoying it immensely getting to binge it again because it is my escapism, especially because we talk media all the time, and I don't get much escapism from it most of the time. The 2 pros I'm gonna say I do dig it. The 2 things that I like about this is, like, for me, what this story does is it treats Greek myth as kind of a blank slate to talk about really heavy topics that are present in Greek myth, and Rachel Smith, the creator, does not shy away from them. Like, she's someone, we've commented on other creators being like, "Oh, you don't wanna go there and talk about rape? You don't wanna go there and talk about the murder? You don't wanna go there and talk about, like, the toxic relationships that exist between these characters?" Rachel Smith goes there, and that's something I really appreciate.
Sidebar, and we can edit this
Yeah.
out later. Is it Smith or Smythe?
Ooh, good question. Anyone know?
I do not know.
In my head, I was saying Smythe,
That's fair,
but
she's from New Zealand. I don't know if that helps us in any regard.
Well, it's also like Smythe, isn't that like it's a Greek textbook, right? A Smythe,
that's also
and that's
yes.
Yeah.
Herbert Ware Smythe.
I'm sorry, that's like burned into my brain.
God, I mean, this is what I should have done. Should have checked on sometimes I just go on YouTube and see if I can find like an interview where someone says their name out loud.
But anyway, like what a big plus for me on this series is like it is actually dealing with really heavy topics in what feels like a healthy way a lot of the times. Like there's talk about going to therapy, there's talks about the need for communication, there's examples of taking ownership of your own actions, and there's examples of people who don't, gods who don't. And I think it models a lot of things that are people our age and younger having to navigate in dating relationships. And so I think that's why it's very popular in a lot of ways. The other thing that I kind of like is, again, the creator is taking some major swings with storylines, right? Like the way she's interconnecting different mythological stories to tell like one chronological event is kind of impressive because that's not what Greek myth really does. We try to make it do that, but that like it doesn't. So you get interesting relationships like Artemis and Apollo not being aware that Zeus is their father for like a period of time, or that like Persephone is actually born from flowers and like
Yeah,
huspa
I
on
think
the part of Demeter.
I think the creator, she's talked about a little bit of like a deliberate choice to not have the original like 6 Olympians like be all siblings, just to avoid the whole incest
Yeah.
dynamic of the original story,
And
which
yet
I get.
I
I
appreciate
get that,
yeah.
but she still keeps it a little weird, like in a good myth way, like when the relationship between Ares and Eros.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that like
Yeah.
well, or that like yeah, Zeus is like Ares' dad is basically stooping his girlfriend.
His girlfriend on top of that, yeah, with
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like there's still enough of the weird dynamics that, like, if we teach this stuff in class, students are like, "Wait, what? They're related that way?" But then and we're like, "Yeah, that's just how myth has been consolidated in different ways over time." So, like, I thought I've been very impressed with how she weaved together quite a few different mythological retellings in a way that to me seems to make sense as far as like I said, I've reread all the way up to the time skip, which happens right after the trial arc, and I've read beyond that in the past, but that's what I most vividly know of at the moment. So that is my 2 cents at the moment. Erica, can I ask, since you've been doing this for your thesis, can you tell us like how does Lore Olympus compare to some of the other retellings that you've been looking at?
Oh, happily. I think part of why I do dig it so much is it was a fun read, but also I was an anime kid for a while in middle school and a manga kid. So, like, that was seeing the story told in animation was really, really fun. And the colors were really fresh and fun and engaging to see. But also, I have 11 modern adaptations that I looked at for the thesis on my
Wow.
chart.
Hmm.
2 of those are TV shows. I looked at Chaos and Blood of Zeus, actually.
Nice.
And this one, Lore Olympus, is the only webtoon that's on there. There are a lot of really bad YA novels on there.
Sounds about right.
Um, the amount of, you want to talk about lack of good communication? Good lord, this was it. Some of them are just horrible, and one of them too, the characters are completely twisted in a way that they're just unrecognizable sometimes. Like in My Ex from Hell, Persephone is a high school student. She was turned into a human by Prometheus, who is also now a human. She was actually taken from Olympus not by Hades, but by Hades' son Kai, who I cannot find any mythological record for it anywhere. I have looked.
Isn't
I
that
have
one of the
consulted.
characters from Digimon?
Yes. Yes, it is. Colin.
when you said Kai, I'm like, oh yeah, it's the guy from Digimon.
Yes,
him,
Digimon.
him and Agumon were just fans.
Digimon, the Persephone special.
A crossover we didn't know we needed.
Loki, has anyone checked in on Digimon? They might have done an adaptation for all I know.
But Lore Olympus, it still feels. I really appreciate the way that the stories are woven together. It feels a little bit Ovidian to me, like the Metamorphosis, because the characters do weave themselves in and out. They have these relationships. We see Cupid and Psyche. We see Daphne. We see Echo. We get these other characters who actually are in myth. So it's got just enough to keep me going. I can see where this is adapted from, or I can see a mythological parallel with this. In some of the versions that I looked at, I don't think they really did that. I think it was in name only, or it was for the romance aspect of, oh, I want a goddess with flowers who's also kind of edgy and emo in the underworld.
Yeah.
But not really anything that I would attribute to being Persephone-like.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's a whole like sub route we could go down of like the hot topicification of Persephone, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's also a new character, like there's a new kind of goth.
Like
Yes,
a hippie
it's
goth?
called
Like,
pastel goth. It's called pastel goth,
Yeah.
which
all
is
right. Yeah.
I think Persephone would be the poster child for, frankly.
Is this like light academia instead of dark academia?
Yeah, basically.
Jesus Christ.
Are we gonna like pull up the chart of like punk rock or
I
something
know
like
we
that?
need
Like,
I need an axis with like where does this
Yeah.
fit on my metal versus punk versus
on the
rock
scale, yeah, on the
versus
scale of like
metal?
Dead Kennedys to My Chemical Romance,
Yes.
where are we?
Where are we?
I mean, we are in a place where she is like, it's not a phase mom, you know, like
Mhm.
she does
Yeah.
push back against Demeter to say, hey, it's not a phase. I do like the underworld, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't even know of like where, but like the appeal of Persephone to like not to like reduce it, but like to that like hot topic demographic or something, like the like why that story in like so many of these adaptations, or like a trend in a lot of recent adaptations, is the trend of like Hades recognizing the inner darkness, beauty, queen, raven, darkness, dementia, ebony way that is Persephone. um,
Yeah.
yeah. For listeners who didn't know what that joke was about, look it up.
I love reading that when I feel bad about my writing.
Google my immortal. That's how I establish street cred among my students sometimes, if I can make a my immortal reference. But yeah, like that like, part of the enduring legacy, I think, even of this story is the like that inherent, I don't know, the inherent emo-ness maybe, or the potential to for the story.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if there's, because the Persephone and Hades story, I have always kind of aligned with the Beauty and the Beast kind of story. And I don't know if that's necessarily correct in illusion, but there's like this, the male figure is supposedly less desirable because of something beast or underworldy or monstrous
Maybe
in
we
some way.
we should just take a step back and like, even like for the benefit of my listeners, because lay the floor out for like, I don't know, the stratification of Persephone myth.
That might be a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Well, so this story specifically is a reference of the abduction of Persephone, which is reported to us in the Homeric hymn to Demeter. And I think remind me, Erica, there was a couple other sources, right? Ancient sources?
Well, it's in Ovid's Metamorphoses, book 5. It also is, there's a few tiny references that like Virgil makes.
Yeah.
Elsewhere.
Hesiod has a shout out maybe, or something like that.
Yeah, Hesiod mentions her as well, but it's like 2 lines.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually do have a book with all of my charts. There are Orphic hymns to Persephone, and those get weird because it's not even Hades who rapes her in the Orphic hymns. It's Zeus. And then if we skip ahead just a little bit, we've got Claudian's De Raptu Proserpina, which dates to about like the 300-400s AD. And we also have Nonnos's Dionysica, which was in Greek and also was in like the 5th century AD.
Yeah, that's a spread of like 1,000 to 1,200 years, something like that. Yeah.
And yet still not a lot of material on the story overall, right? Like it, as much as any myth is.
There were probably more local traditions that would have been oral. The thing with a lot of the Homeric hymns is they were probably an amalgamation of different local variations of the story, similar to how like Homer probably actually composed Homer in air quotes actually composed like the Iliad or the Odyssey, where it was a mixture of different various oral traditions. So the story was told and it was well known, and probably the Homeric hymn to Demeter contains a lot of Eleusinian variants as well as Attic variants of the myth.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So the basic kind of gist, at least in that hymn version, is like Erica kind of alluded at. A lot of it is under this massive, or this guiding umbrella of like explaining the ritual at a particular site and like why a festival happens and things like that. But in that story, the gist is the young maiden Persephone, daughter of Demeter, is abducted by Hades down to the underworld. Demeter goes in search for Persephone. There's interludes and stories about what happens on Earth while Demeter is searching for her. Finally, to appease Demeter, who has been basically killing the Earth, for lack of a better word, Zeus commands a return. Persephone is returned to Hades. or not to Hades, sorry, returned to Demeter. However, she has eaten from these pomegranate seeds, and so has to spend part of her time up on the surface with her mother and part of the time in the underworld with her spouse, Hades. And there's all sorts of ways to come at the story. And funnily enough, like, if you're in a mythology course, this is actually a really helpful myth because it is a really good example of like different lenses and theories you can apply. You can talk about the ritual connections at this site of Lucis. You can talk about, is this a nature ideology that explains seasons and seasonality and weather, and et cetera? Is this a psychological myth? Is this about the sort of trauma and pain of like daughters or going to husbands that they don't know, of mothers being separated from daughters? Is it about the sort of social charters and institutions? Is this about marriage practices? And there's kind of two lines of thought, at least as I understand it. One being, there is a sort of avenue of interpretations involving like these stories are in some ways centered around women and women's rituals as a way to sort of reconcile or express or deal or engage with this kind of trauma instituted in a patriarchal world where daughters are just sort of traded. Or on the flip side, like I think like Helene Foley talks about how this is actually like a reinforcement for like marriage. This is how it is. It maybe sucks for all people involved, but like make your peace with it because this is how marriage is going to be.
Yeah. And what's an interesting sidebar, after Camus, Elijah and I, with our friend Sammy, went to the Art Institute of Chicago, and we saw this fascinating sarcophagus.
Oh, it was really cool.
That is showing the abduction of Persephone. And we stood there for like 10, 15 minutes because we were realizing all of the goddesses were there.
Yeah.
As part of this abduction story. And in the hymn to Demeter is like very, like, I think Hecate is one of the only ones that helps, and Helios is the witness to the abduction, but like, and then there's nymphs, but like other than that, like there's not a lot of involvement of any other goddesses at all. And we were blown away by this visual depiction of the story because like Athena is there and she's holding onto Hades' elbow, but it looks like she's pushing him forward, and we're like trying to it's like, are they helping with the abduction? Are they trying to stop Hades? And like, why are all of them here?
Yeah.
And it just goes to show there's so many iterations of the story that are told not just in our text, but they've been told visually as well. And that's why this medium is kind of cool to talk about, because we're bringing the visual aspect back to myth telling, which is really important, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Also, what do you know when that sarcophagus dates to?
Was it Roman?
If it's like a
Roman.
big stone, it's got to be Roman, right?
Oh,
If
no,
like
it was definitely very Roman. So it was later. I want to say second to third. So think like that, like really crowded, like lots of figure.
I just wondered because I know at least by the time we get to Claudian's telling of the myth, Aphrodite actually is there and she sort of talks Persephone into going outside and going to like pick flowers. And Artemis and Athena are both also there, and they actually do try to interfere at first.
I found it.
Oh,
I got it.
Cool.
Yeah, and it's late 2nd century Roman marble.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like Athena's like pushing Hades' elbow and he's like carrying Persephone over his shoulder.
That is really cool.
It's kind of wild.
Yeah, it was so cool, and like Elijah and I spent so much time there.
Aphrodite.
I have to remind my co-hosts we are in an audio format, and so our listeners
we'll post
picture.
and they hold up their phones to the camera.
Well, I was showing Erica.
All right, we'll post a picture of it later.
Yeah, but it's Roman 2nd century, so like, but it was like me and Elijah were standing there. We're like, what is this version? Oh my
for
God.
a while.
Yeah.
Well, in Claudian, like I said, they are actually there, and they do try to actually stop Hades from taking her away, and Zeus actually interferes and tells them that they can't mess with his will on the subject.
Yeah, and it's been a minute, but remind me, because I think when I was an undergrad, we read Claudian, and there's a part in the beginning of that talks about like Hades is preparing, or Pluto, I should say, is preparing war against Olympus, and the Persephone is basically like a peace offering from Zeus to a sage off, which to my knowledge is original to Claudian, but I don't actually know.
Yeah, it's Hades definitely does. He's threatening basically civil war against Zeus if he
Mhm.
doesn't get a wife because he feels really lonely down in the underworld. So
Right.
and that's in the first prologue to the first book.
Yeah.
And that's definitely an influence on this retelling for
Oh,
sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it just feels very, it's like that feels like a thing Romans, I mean, when this is being written, the empire has literally just been divided into two halves.
Yes.
And there have been, I don't know how many civil wars at this point in Roman history, like
So
So
many.
5.
many.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely by Claudian's time, like there's an eastern half and there's a western half. And so it is there's a lot of gigantomachy references through Claudian as
Mhm.
well. Um,
Mm.
like Demeter goes to the grove where the spoils of Enceladus, who is one of the giants, are, and she actually rips up 2 of these trees that are sacred to Jupiter and uses them as her torches to go find Persephone, which is just such a
Nice.
badass moment. I absolutely love
Mhm.
it.
And yeah, readers, we should plug, like, readers, if you're curious, Claudian doesn't get a lot of airtime usually, but if you're looking for like a real heavy metal
Oh,
Greek and
yeah.
Latin poem,
100%.
the description of the underworld is real kick ass.
And
But
there's a whole marriage scene in that one too. Like there's attendance, everyone in the underworld is like rejoicing. It's almost like an anti-Disney movie. It makes me think of like that scene in Sleeping Beauty where they're in Maleficent's castle and everybody's like just jumping around and happy. It's kind of how I
yeah.
picture it. Everyone's real pleased.
Or like when Saruman tells all the Uruk-hai that they're going to have man flesh and everyone just goes like ape shit.
Yeah.
Or the demon in Fantasia when he like wakes up and is
Mhm.
super excited about everything.
Yeah, Chernobyl or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah.
Well, in terms of so something I was surprised to learn when I revisited Lore Olympus was that it was the beginning of Persephone and Hades' relationship was also being told at the same time as the story of Eros and Psyche. Like
Mhm.
those were
Mhm.
like the two, and like for me, not so much Persephone and Hades, but to me, it's like if you wanted a romantic story from ancient Greece about the only place you could kind of look was Eros and Psyche.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, to Eli's point, a very Beauty and the Beast kind of
Yes,
thing.
that one
Yeah,
very
it
much so.
is. And I think
Mhm.
it's also like that connects a lot to there's the like a Scandinavian version of that,
Mhm.
right? That with like the bear
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
Mhm.
East of the sun,
yeah,
Yeah.
west of the
so
moon. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes, thank
It's
you.
it's the animal bride kind of motif of like
Yes.
where you have, which is going to get to my main question, which is like you have this motif in folklore, and there's like a gajillion variations on this, where like a woman is married off to either like a monster or an animal or a whatever, an ugly thing, and then by virtue of being a dutiful wife and a good and chaste and noble and virtuous young woman and spouse, transforms them away from the monster into the prince or some variation, right? And then
Right.
and then there's like jealous stepsisters or something like that,
Yes.
which is kind of getting to the crux of the issue with both Persephone's story, the retellings of the Persephone story, and the impulse to romanticize or turn what is originally a rape and abduction story and a marriage thing and to turn it into a consenting romance of sorts. Of, is this, I don't know how to phrase this question, but I think we all kind of know
It's
what we're circling
it's
around.
the heteronormative fantasy that we've all created for ourselves in a patriarchal system, right? Like
What that the women take on all of the emotional and intellectual like baggage of their male counterparts and suddenly everything is better.
Mhm.
kind of like so again, just like the ancient Greeks, just like modern society, it's patriarchal, right? And there are traditional gender roles we are expected to fill in that system, and they are in complete opposite of each other, right? In a
Mhm.
lot of ways. Like one's domestic and caring and empathetic, and one is, I will add traits like protective, strong,
Mhm.
but Greek myth often explores this idea of like, but that is taken often too much to the
Right.
extreme, and
Right.
when brought into a domestic space, that creates problems. And, I think that, there's plenty of studies out there that exist that talk about how, like, women in heteronormative marriages tend to be less happy than the men in those relationships until the relationship ends in some regard. And I think that
A la like a Carrie Underwood song.
basically,
Yes. Yeah.
like, but what we like to try and tell ourselves, especially this process of dating into marriage or something, right, is this fantasy of it will get better if I am better and
What
fulfill this gendered role, and then he will fulfill the gendered role, and then we'll bring out the best in both.
And I guess this is the macro question about Lore Olympus and any Persephone retelling, but especially with this one of like in romanticizing the Hades Persephone dynamic, and despite all the ways it is being progressive or forward thinking or novel in the way it presents sex, relationships, dynamics, power, things like that, is it still implicitly reasserting a very traditionalist kind of relationship, just in the way that they are, like the way that Persephone is sort of young, nature based, naive, emotionally sort of charged. Hades is the breadwinner. We'll talk about the capitalism thing later, but
Yeah. Literally screams
um,
capitalism at one point.
um, maybe a slaver, but domineering. He's defensive. And again, this is to bring it back to the Twilight thing, where I think like Twilight
Mhm.
is kind of doing many of these things. Like, Hades in some ways is like just sort of a slightly sanded down and like a more polite version of Edward Cullen, but like how he's defensive and protective and anger prone and prone to violence. And I don't know.
Yeah. I think you make a good point, and, like, for me, it's like Lore Olympus sometimes does better because he's self-aware of his problems, and especially when they're talking about the relationship with Minthe. And we
Mhm.
do get, like, a letter he writes as instructed by his therapist to Corey that he doesn't send. But at the same time, we don't actually see him go to therapy. We don't actually see him necessarily deal with his trauma outside of his relationship with Persephone.
I do really wish we saw that because, yeah, it is referenced. Like he talks about, oh, I need to make an appointment with my therapist. So he's
Mhm.
at least willing to engage with that as being
Yeah.
something, but we don't actually see the follow through. And I think it would
Mhm.
have been a lot more powerful to get that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I I'm also thinking of in the very beginning, like when Persephone first meets Apollo, and he is also exhibiting a lot of those like hyper toxic masculinity, overprotective, like I'm just worried about you, like I'm just like upset because I'm scared you're going to get hurt. Like he says
Yeah.
a lot of those things too, but is then really a horrific person
Yeah.
Mhm.
and like doesn't actually care about her. He's using it as an excuse. And it, I feel like, does kind of flip when Hades is also maybe overprotective or says things that are just like a little bit too aggressive. He actually does seem to care. And
And he'll check
I feel like it's
himself.
hard to, yes, but I do feel like it's hard to sort of like know the difference, right? It's like how
Yeah.
do women, how do,
Well,
again, if Persephone is this like young naive, like her first relationship, like her first foray into the world, how is she supposed to know the difference between someone who actually cares about her and someone who's just awful?
Performing in a way to control. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. And I would say that like that what you bring up with Apollo is exactly why they're able to do that, right? Because
Yeah.
he's actually the first person who she has a sexual experience with. He's the
Mhm.
first person who shows her that kind of attention. So then her first she's got at least a little bit more knowledge going into Hades in a
Mhm.
way, but Apollo is kind of the foil for Hades in the
Yeah.
story, for sure. And that's
Yeah.
the only way that they were able to, I think, make Hades into somewhat of a good guy
Yeah.
was by
By
sort of
making someone worse.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And on that, I say, like, I think maybe one of my biggest hangups, and this is not original to me, but something I noticed as I was sort of perusing around just what people were sort of saying about how, like, the story, because it's kind of by its construction, it's so centered on Hades and Persephone that in a way, like her being with Hades is very isolating. It like isolates her from it isolates her from her mother, it isolates her from her female friends, from other women kind of generally, and and even just like how she handles her own trauma is like often or almost even exclusively like mitigated or like mediated through Hades himself. And there's kind of a weird there's this whole like it's you and me against the world kind of thing, which I can see in some senses like how romantic, but also like low key if someone you knew went with their partner and was like it's us two against the world, to be like you are in a cult.
I think that's where a lot of critiques come in. We haven't gotten into the relationship with the mother yet.
Mm-hmm.
But what I have thought back and sat on is, we say romantasy, right? Like, because there's
Mm-hmm.
romance and fantasy, but I also like romantasy works because we have a fantasy of what romance should look like. And when we critique and say, like, this is actually how relationships should be, these relationships that Rachel created feel so real to me. These
Mm-hmm.
mistakes feel real to me. These emotions feel real, and they are not perfect. They are not the ideal fantasy of romance. This is what young women and young men in some ways are walking into when they first go into these relationships with people. Like Apollo is a terrible character, but it's also this idea of like I am the ideal. Like Apollo
Yeah.
is the ideal, right?
That guy exists on multiple fraternities
Yes.
across the country
Yeah.
right now,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How can someone not want him for who he is? It just doesn't compute. And when the world tells you it's like you are the ideal, no one would refuse you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, still a problematic guy, but also it's like, but the world has helped create that. It's not
Oh, yeah.
just inherently born into him that way. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's my issue, right? Like I think why I like Lore Olympus, but I understand the critiques of it is like this is showing us the world as is. It's not a fantasy. And we kind of want it to be. We want it to be the escapism. We want it to be the perfect relationship. And it's
Well,
not.
this is to me kind of one of my hangups, but also like a hurdle for the romance genre in a way that it models and is like didactic in a way that other genres aren't, right? Or like I guess in horror you learn like don't go down into the basement alone or whatever. Like
Yeah.
there's lots of lessons you can take from horror movies, but in the way that like why romance, like I feel like there's so much criticism directed towards romance media because it kind of has this one, I think because there is like a gendered thing going on where like things that women are interested in are going to necessarily or innately attract sort of extra scrutiny and criticism and critique, but also that like with Twilight again of like it's inevitably modeling things, and there's always an element with romantasy of or not romantasy with romance of like there is the sort of the cipherness sometimes of characters of like it is a kind of I don't know how to describe it, like a mediated, like you want to see yourself in the protagonist's place and like
Yeah.
live sort of vicariously
Definitely.
through these stories, and the latent fear of like, is this setting up either like unrealistic expectations? Is it romanticizing problematic behavior? Is it, setting examples, all that kind of stuff, which I don't really have an answer for, but it is a thing just like that is inherent to the genre that is, I think, unique to the genre in a way that I find fascinating, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Mhm.
I
Definitely.
do.
Yeah.
I really appreciate the way that they do actually bring some of these modern issues that women have to face actually to the forefront. Like at the beginning, when she first goes to the underworld, it's because she's drugged at a party and thrown in the
Mhm.
back of a car, and that is something that like happens way more than it
Yeah.
should.
Yeah.
And I think
Mhm.
it's not necessarily. It's definitely not. It doesn't feel to me like it's condoning the behavior, but it is calling attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I think the commentary, the conversation around it actually really matters because that scene you're referring to, like what she does afterwards is she's like, well, maybe this happened because I'm naive because I
Yeah.
don't know how the world works. you could be, first time at the bar or a 10-year veteran, and
Yep.
that could
Mhm.
happen to you.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
And
but
yeah.
also Persephone is weirdly kind of naive in this story, right? Like there's certain aspects to her that she is into a way. Like one of my big hangups is like it's borderline infantilizing about her.
It's
Sure.
it's
Yeah, no, I
weird.
get that.
Yeah, like, because it's very well established that she is intelligent.
Hmm.
She considers herself from, like, I don't know, I guess I can relate to this a lot. I'm from a small town in central Washington. I get having, like, been top of my class in an academic setting, and then all of a sudden moving to a bigger town and a
Mhm.
bigger pool of people for the first time, and
She's like
how
sorry. Mhm.
and no, I was just saying, it's like, and what she is not is street smart, right? That's kind of
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
we would call it, and
Hmm.
I don't know, some people may not find that relatable, but, like, if you are literally, like, a big fish, small pond, all of a sudden thrown into the ocean, the naivety comes through. I even to this day, I'm completely oblivious to things that, like, friends amongst I'd be like, I feel a little sketched out, we should go," and I'm like, "What? Why?"
Oh, that's happened to us in
It
Ganji,
has
actually.
exactly
Yeah.
happened to
It's
us.
the energy of someone who was like homeschooled or went to like a tiny like religious community and then like goes to college for the first, like that is 100% the kind of vibe, because like Demeter doesn't let her out of anything, sets her up for this like purity scholarship, basically
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
to goem, I don't know, the
to go up. Yeah, the
TGOEM.
the goddesses of eternal maidenhood.
Right, which is I mean I feel like is very much like akin to like these like chastity vows or something that
Mhm.
somebody in like a
Yeah.
church youth camp might take.
Or
And
Mormonism,
yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
which is
But
where the Twilight stuff comes in as well.
mhm.
Oh, God, yeah.
But then
Didn't
this
even
is
make
again
that connection.
what sort of gives me a little bit of the ick, where like Persephone is all of these things, but then on the flip side, Hades is. I mean, it is brought up in the comic, not comic, yeah, the comic that
Mhm.
Persephone is 19 years old,
Yeah.
hard stop,
Yep.
prior to the time jump, and then she's like 30,
Yes.
and Hades is 2000 and change, but for all intents and purposes, middle aged.
Yeah, I gotta say, the age gap has never been something that I've been okay with. Like, there are so many romantasy stories where it's like 1,000-year-old dude who's like immortal in some way, and 19-year-old girl. And
Oh,
it
Yeah.
you should not
feels,
go down the anime route where it gets so fucking weird so quick.
well,
Don't
Where
go
it's
there.
like,
Don't go there, Colin. I know what
I know,
anime you're talking about.
I
Don't
know.
go there.
but it's like it's not just one story, right? Like this is a
Mhm.
thematic thing that we see over and over of this like ageless being having some sort of romantic relationship with a human. And that has always felt weird to me. It has always been a little bit icky. And again, like Christy, I was a big Twilight fan in high school.
Mhm.
Like I liked the books before the movies came out, and then I was like, wow, this is dumb. Um, but like even that was weird. Like he was like 100 some years old, and she was what 16.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
kind of weird. And I always have had a hard time with the age gap, and I don't know how
And
to kind of negotiate it in a
I
story.
also couldn't get out of my head the 50 Shades of Grey in the background, where because on top of the big age gap, he's a millionaire,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
which is what it reminded me of. Like, is this guy like Christian Grey? Because it's like,
Well, it
is
makes
the
sense because
Mhm.
he's Pluto, right? He's
Well, yeah,
Hades. Like,
Hades like
it
would be
makes
a
sense.
millionaire. Like, that's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
my.
Well, and Minthe calls that out too, right? Like his behavior towards Persephone is not unlike his behavior towards Minthe early on in their relationship too. And again, it's like the pitfalls of dating in the modern age of like how do
And
you
then
navigate?
dating your much older boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, wonderful we're out here critiquing it right now, but also this shit happens. Like it
Yeah.
just does.
Yes.
I also saw did you guys finish watching White Lotus, the most
Oh
recent
yeah.
season?
Of course.
I
I,
haven't. Don't spoil it for me. I haven't
okay,
started.
well, basically there's just the fact that there's these old rich white men who are dating very young, very beautiful
Thai
Asian
woman.
yeah, women,
Mhm.
and like, what's her name? Piper's mom. Shoot.
Oh
She
no, yeah, I know. Oh,
she just
crap.
goes up and she's like, "Oh, honey, you're cute and beautiful. Why are you dating?"
Yeah, why are you dating
He's
him?
like, "I love him." And she's like, "Oh, honey."
I'm gonna date this episode, but have any of you been following with this disastrous Bill Belichick interview?
No.
No.
Oh, so like in like a fluff piece Saturday morning interview, Bill Belichick, who is now coaching for UNC, the interviewer asked like, "Oh, like he has a new girlfriend who is 24, and Bill Belichick is like 73,
Okay.
and she's like an influencer or
Wow.
something." And the reporter just
Mhm.
asked like, "Oh, how'd you like two meet her?" And like, because like they have a story that they have paraded out elsewhere about like they met on a plane or whatever. And the girlfriend just kind of like jumps in and like shuts down the interview and is like, "No questions on
Oh.
this." And then that has like led to all this other weird, like this weirdness about that how she now has to be forwarded on like all work emails that he's getting at his job at UNC. And then so this whole thing of like, what is going on with this? Like there's something true. Anyways,
Yeah.
real weird vibes. But if you want some like vicarious cringe, go watch the interview. But
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Well, should we I mean, there's a lot of romance to talk about, but I think the other big topic that we always come across when we're talking to people is the relationship between Persephone and Demeter and how it's portrayed in this series. So I feel
yeah,
like that's definitely something we should tackle here as well. And yeah, again, if you listen to our live episode, we get into this a little bit. And I will say again, something that I very much resonated with me for the character of Persephone is that like she was an overachiever her entire life, and she like her man, when I read the whole scene with her and Chiron for her therapy session, oh man, did that resonate, because it's like this fear of like you've always been such a high accomplishment that if something goes wrong, you fear you're disappointing everyone, and particularly your mother, but also it's like your disappointment in yourself probably overshadows any disappointment anyone else in your life
Yeah.
feels. And that I know people get upset with the relationship, but I understand that. And like I don't
Mhm.
consider my own mother by any means like someone as a helicopter parent who like I was just really good in school and I was very supported in that. It became a huge part of my identity, and it had a huge impact in later life. So I really relate to that storyline of this relationship between a mother and daughter, even if that isn't the ancient relationship.
I do think I also really resonated with the fact that the relationship was complex. Something that I really appreciated about it was that there was this sort of emotional issue there, but that Persephone still obviously loved her mom, right?
Mhm.
Like she still definitely loves her, she still wants to be close with her, but there are things that she's like growing older with and that she needs to address. And I think that that's I mean, that really resonated with me
Yeah.
as
Mhm.
a person, especially thinking about growing older, the relationship with both parents honestly changing and becoming something different. But I also think it raises an interesting point of comparison, actually, or an interesting reading that you could make with the Homeric hymn. Because in the Homeric hymn, Persephone is only referred to as Kore, which just means maiden, or she's
Mhm.
referred to as the Thugater of Demeter, like just the daughter of Demeter. And that's pretty much it until after we see her in Hades or
Mhm.
in the underworld, and then she's called Persephone. So I do think it's kind of a powerful moment to think about the fact that as she's undergoing this, it is a bit of a coming of age story where she's kind of finding herself as well. And I think that really comes across in Lore Olympus. It's not necessarily that she's trying to distance herself from her mother completely, she's just coming into herself.
Mhm.
I think so much of the like criticism that I have seen about Lore Olympus has to do with Demeter's relationship with Persephone, and how I think the like some of the overarching critiques are that like Demeter was a loving parent, and Persephone was like abducted, and we're turning this into something that it wasn't. But I agree that there is, especially in the modern world, a tension between parents and their children. And certainly also in the ancient world, there was thresholds that children passed that, much like birth and death, are ritualized and traumatic in various ways, anthropologically, just sort of, crossing those thresholds. And I do think that it is an interesting relationship to have variations on. So I feel like it doesn't necessarily bother me that we're taking it a different way, because I think we have the story of Demeter as a really heartbroken parent trying to find her child, which is something that a lot of people can really attach to. But I think there's also the story of Persephone as a not necessarily rebellious, but just like a person becoming an adult, wanting to make her own choices and conflicting with her mother in some way.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a
Mhm.
lot of people who could also attach to that story. And so I think, yeah, the use of this tension, that doesn't bother me in this particular variation.
I also think too, it doesn't bother me so much, but I see Lore Olympus as more of a story about Persephone, right?
Yeah,
Like it
yeah.
doesn't feel the Homeric hymn to Demeter feels like it's
Is
actually mostly about
Demeter.
Demeter,
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
But this adaptation is definitely mostly about Persephone. And I think I do have beef with the fact that most modern adaptations seem to be just about Persephone, and I feel like Demeter's being done dirty because we don't get very much of her side of
Yeah.
Yeah.
the story.
There seems to be kind of like two roads you can go down when
Yes.
adapting the
Yes.
Persephone myth,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
either Hades is the villain or Demeter is the villain. And it seems like lately I've been seeing more Demeter is the sort of overbearing helicopter parent that,
Right.
stifling figure. Mhm.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. Like, I can see where, like, like sexism can come in that regard, because like
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
she becomes the target for something that I've working with a lot of little kids recently. It's like
Sure.
I see overprotectiveness from men just as much as women when it comes to small children. And like it's very weird. I think there's also an element that we forget, like again in these nuclear family systems and patriarchy, is that women get to control children. And like a lot of that control comes from a loving concern and protectiveness of children, but it's like that's control you have that you eventually have to relinquish when they become full human beings, and like that can be really hard to deal with. And
Mhm.
I do like that, like Demeter, they unpack some of that. She's like, I was in a war when I was your age. And Persephone throws back, it's like, dude, Hermes was hanging out with cattle and making instruments when he was an infant, and like I'm 19 now. I can do some things. Like I can go to live on campus at college.
This leads me actually to a thought and a question, because there's a sort of a major scene in the Homeric hymn to Demeter involves, while Demeter is sort of separated from Persephone, she disguises herself as a mortal, and she goes into a house at Eleusis and works as a nurse, and basically becomes like a surrogate mom from this kid Demophon, who she's gonna grant immortality to, and then she's interrupted, and then she dictates that they need to like create a temple to her and things like that. But like,
Mhm.
actually, I want to ask Erica of like, is that the, because a very maybe sort of straight down the middle interpretation is that like for Demeter, like the loss of one child is going to preempt, or like she's just searching for, like, she needs to be a mother to someone or something. There's a weird comparison, but it reminds me, like, there's a thing when in Antarctica when penguins have their like egg hatching season, and like not all
Yeah.
the eggs hatch, and some of the and some of the eggs don't have parents to claim them, and the mothers literally like fight one another for the unclaimed chicks, and sometimes end up like
Oh.
crushing the chick. But anyways, like that, like Demeter is searching for this kind of surrogacy for like a baby, that like she almost like kidnaps someone else's baby to like be a mother to that.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask is like, does that ever come up? I feel like that's a part of the story that is like,
Oh yeah, no, that is. I'm happy you actually brought that up. I do think that's a really nice psychological moment in the Homeric hymn to Demeter, and it actually Have you read any of Anne Suter's work?
Mm-mm.
In her book, The Narcissus and the Pomegranate, she actually kind of talks about how as mothers have children that are growing towards adolescence, they start to have these fears of abandonment. And then those kind of come out in different ways. So because they're afraid, they can sometimes have aggressiveness, they can have denial, depression, manic activity, and even like illusions because they have this fear of losing their child who they've birthed. They have this really deep emotional connection to. And I think that's definitely that psychological element to it is very much present in the Homeric hymn. The only modern adaptation, well, there's two modern-ish adaptations I looked at that dealt with this really, really nicely. Rita Dove's poetry collection, Mother Love. She has a really fabulous poem about where she asks, like, who can forget the act of mothering? Who can forget how it feels? And you want to have a baby again. Also, in Daughters of Olympus, which just came out in 2024, I mean, you see the Demophoon episode in there, and she is just completely bereft. She is destroyed, and this child makes her happy again. And that's part of why she actually wants to give him immortality. So yeah, I definitely think that the psychological element there should be explored more from Demeter's point of view.
Especially in the ancient world, because like so much of what defines women's identity in the ancient world is motherhood.
Yeah.
And we never really contemplate. It's like, what is it to a woman to actually successfully see your children
Yeah.
leave your household?
Well, especially considering like such a high like infant mortality rate that we
Mhm.
know existed in the ancient world, it was like practically miraculous to
Right.
have multiple grown children.
Yeah, it's old fashioned, but there's two ways to sort of see the loss of Persephone is like either a sort of analogy for just the actual death of a child
Yeah.
or the figurative death of a child by virtue of her growing up and going off and becoming an adult and marrying by virtue of marrying somebody else. And that right. And that both of it is framed the thing, like Erica was saying, the kind of psychological element that the myth or the Homeric hymn kind of really hits on is the fallout from the loss. That's what it's deeply concerned with.
I do also, this is way later than what we're actually going to talk about in Lore Olympus, but Demophoon actually does come up with, as a character very close towards the end. And basically, he was just a human kid that she had, and then he died. And Hades kind of gives her back this kid because Demeter has this moment in Lore Olympus where she's crying, and she's like, I feel like I've lost two children to the underworld at this point. So Hades manages to find a loophole to send her back to Demophoon, but they call him Triptolemus then, which does tie in. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
See what they did there.
Yeah, because I know part of the time skip, part of the punishment of the trials is that Demeter's stripped of her powers and sent to Eleusis for the 10-year period.
This is totally, because I just read the trial section like today, but like I don't know if maybe I'm being crazy, but I read, maybe cut this out later, but I was like, I read Zeus's proclamation, like this feels like a fair punishment for like this, like the thing is framing it as this is a completely unjust thing, but like this seems to be not a crazy verdict and not an insane punishment. But
I think it comes out more at like, I don't know how far past the trial you got.
Like he's the way he adjudicates it, yes, is a little BS. But
well, it's more of like it's the fact that like it actually affects everyone on Olympus, like because the connections between the mortal realm, the underworld, and Olympia, they're all cut off.
Because she's on trial for murdering a city, right? Like,
yeah, basically.
Okay.
I didn't read this far.
Oh, okay.
She murders a whole city, or has murdered a whole city, and goes on trial. And the trial, there's a whole other thing about like this is the least professional trial ever. Or one of the judges is then called up to be like one of the leading counsels, and like also he's in a romantic relationship with his client, which I feel like there's like as my lawyer relatives tell me, there's like 2 rules to being a lawyer, which is don't accept bribes and don't sleep with anyone involved in the trial. Eli, I feel like Nick can corroborate this.
Yeah, no, I was like, I feel like I could walk out there and be like, what are the 2 rules of being a lawyer?
Like the 2 things you got to remember when you practice law is don't take bribes and don't sleep with anyone that is involved in the trial. Which, like, again, this whole trial is so. I mean, I guess because it's Olympus and
I mean, it's Zeus. It's
yeah, because it's like no, but there's the judge is also the main prosecutor, but also one of the 3 judges is now the lawyer for the. I'm like, this is fucking bullshit. But
yeah, no, it definitely like it seems fair, but like I said, I think what the outcome was the fact that like there's like Hermes, for instance, like my mom's mortal. Does this mean I don't get to see her? And like because Hermes goes through the different realms all the time.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? And like I think he also declared it's like mortals can't leave the mortal realm. So it's like, so then how do they go? Where do they go when they die? Are they just haunting everyone?
If we open up the bottle of like how the rules work in this universe, we're gonna be here all night. But
well, I meant that was more of like what everyone was asking in the courtroom at the matter. It's like, how does this actually work, Zeus? This seems like not well thought out.
But again, I will say, in sort of like in her trial for murdering a city, Persephone, Demeter covers it up. Demeter is temporarily without her powers, and Persephone has to go assume her role on the mortal realm and work there until she fixes things. Yep. Which I was like, am I crazy? I feel like an insane person. I'm agreeing with Zeus on this. But
yeah, in that respect, it's like those punishments, I think, were legit and perfectly fine.
Shutting down everything, right?
Shutting down everything was kind of the like, what? But that move was to prevent, because Zeus has this bigger fear of being overthrown. Right. If Apollo gets a hold of Persephone, because she's a fertility goddess, and make him powerful. And so this was just like, this was a way to like keep them separate as like part of the verdict.
Because there is this thing that like fertility goddesses can enable gods to overthrow their dads, right? That's the basic gist, which is like how Kronos did in Uranos and how Zeus did and Zeus wants to stop that.
Yep. I kind of like that it's like the women are the real power behind the throne in so many ways. Like that kind of made me smile because
that's real. I got to the point
energy,
where there's
right? Very much so, right? I got to that point where they were like the importance of fertility goddesses, and I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. That actually, I like that.
I also this is a great segue into a character I really also want to unpack that because
I was about to say we should talk about the other characters before we go because we're already at an hour and 10. We're like just warming up.
I want to talk about Hera because Hera also has visions and like semi-prophetic powers, and that's something really interesting that I think it's Hesiod. Someone talks about the fact that many of the Titanesses actually sided with the Olympians as part of the Titanomachy. And those Titanesses, a lot of them had prophetic powers. Like they could foresee the future. It was one kind of interesting aspect about them. And I thought that was really interesting that was included with Hera. But really, Hera as a whole is a fascinating character in this series. So I think she's definitely worth talking about as well. I keep reaching across way over here to grab my wine bottle.
I'm gonna open. Wine was 20% off at the liquor store. I'm gonna go.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But it was French wine. So. Anyways, I was about to launch into an impassioned defense of Smythe, who I feel like is done dirty.
I mean, yeah. Honestly, it's like the most hateable character is Thetis by far, which is really weird to think about. It's like I'm sitting here, it's like this is Achilles' mom.
Thetis has also, I would argue Thetis has also been done dirty a lot in
she'd be doing dirty though. Like she's not a good friend by any means.
Like, why does it have to be Thetis? Why is it
it's very interesting as Thetis.
It's mommy issues and maybe a dose of internalized misogyny, but
I guess.
But Smythe is she is the ultimate like other woman, right? She's Hades' prior girlfriend, and in the like tropes of romance or rom-coms or something, like she's the prior girlfriend. She's sexually experienced, where Persephone is naive. She's conniving and cunning in a way where Persephone is innocent and pure. She is the opposite, and I kind of think there is an element of like, I mean, I actually do kind of feel for Smythe, although, like I said, I'm maybe a little bit biased.
No. That's totally fair. And I think like what I like about her relationship with Hades is that like we can be broken together. Because like again, those kinds of relationships do exist, but how long do they persist is a really important question. And
Mhm.
I think that was an interesting exploration of
And
that kind of dynamic.
it's juxtaposed, like we have to juxtapose it against Thetis, right? Because like
Yeah.
Minthe and
Yeah.
Thetis are both, where Thetis is like knowingly engaging in an affair with Zeus
Mhm.
and is basically
Yeah.
like, she's like, I'm gonna get that, I'm gonna cut out the wife, I'm gonna get that bag, whatever. Like there's a hustler's, I don't know, mean girl energy to Thetis.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And Minthe and Thetis, like everything Thetis does, is she kind of keeps Minthe. I forget, somebody says it at some point, or it's phrased in such a way where like Thetis kind of influences Minthe to make her feel good about herself or something like that.
Yeah.
That Minthe is also this nymph, also involved with one of the kings of the kings of Olympus or whatever, the three kings.
Mhm.
But there's this, I don't know how to even describe the relationship.
It's really interesting too because it's again one of these female relationships that we see in media that I'm just like, do these female relationships exist? Because like I don't treat my female friends like this at all. This whole frenemies dynamic, which
Well,
very much exists in
Feels
our media,
very high
but
school.
because
yeah,
well, no. This
yeah.
is like, all women beware. All your female friends are trying to just prevent you from getting with the perfect man, and because they're jealous bitches. Um,
Yeah, and again, and like that's also juxtaposed against Daphne and Persephone, right?
mhm.
Because like Apollo's using Daphne as a stand-in almost for Persephone, but
Mhm.
instead of like getting jealous of Persephone, Daphne like recognizes that behavior for what it is. She's like, "Well, I'm done with this."
Mhm.
And she's really great friends with Persephone. Like it's really Minthe and her relationships become these weird inversions of Persephone and her relationships in a lot of ways. So anyway, Hera, go back to Hera now.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I,
And like what's interesting too, I don't know how far you guys all read, but she eventually is referred to as the golden traitor of
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
sixth traitor
mhm.
generation because the story given to us is that she befriends slash seduces Kronos and makes him consume this plant that weakens him and allows the Olympians to overthrow him eventually. And the other thing is like Hades offered her to be queen of the underworld, but she's already been offered to be queen of the gods. And that's what she goes with. And she has a relationship with both brothers very
Right.
clearly, like very close relationship initially, and we kind of see what has happened. It's very much the relationship we kind of expect to see between Hera and Zeus at this point. So I was just kind of wondering, what did you guys think of her characterization overall?
I appreciate that she didn't fall into the trap of the like jealous, vindictive wife.
Hmm.
I actually really liked her as a character in here. Like we see her having duties, having roles that are separate from Zeus.
Mhm.
Like her whole life isn't just about trying to get back at Zeus for something.
Mhm.
Hmm.
It's like she's got these marriages she's trying to work on. She has relationships with people that seem meaningful. And I think that that was a really, I mean, I really liked her interpretation in this. I think it was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked how she really laid into like the marriage side of things, or she's like, did you know like I'm the goddess of marriage, and she's like kind of poking around, is like, well, do you need to marry someone, like what can I set you up with, like she's this little matchmaker. And it felt almost like kind of Emma vibes in some
Hmm.
ways, of like sort of poking around in
Yeah.
other people's lives, of like, how can I mess with you, how can I like make you like interested in someone else. So I think that was actually a fun version of Hera that we don't often get to see, but also a very powerful version of Hera in not the way we usually see her powers, as being that like vindictive, jealous person using her force against other women. She did a lot of things for good, which
Mm-hmm.
I really loved.
Yeah. I like how it's all kind of bureaucratic too, right? Like
Yeah,
like Apollo has to put in an application
I know.
to court Persephone, and Hera's like, "Nope," rips
Yep.
rips the, and she's got a flow chart of like how different applications and everything are going. And yeah, like I liked a lot of how they really do portray these as bureaucratic jobs in a lot of ways, like all of these roles that they have and these quotas they have to meet. And like Hades going in on Thanatos for not bringing in nearly enough souls ever since they contracted
Capitalism.
out Hermes.
Jesus Christ.
I liked that aspect, and I like that. What's interesting, and I think Chaos did this too, is that Hera's presented as someone who is powerful and wants to hold this position as the queen of the gods. Like she's someone who sacrifices a relationship happiness for the sake of being in a position to help control these things, to help other people, which is really interesting. And it's a little different than Chaos in terms of like, oh, she just wants to be, the power behind the throne, basically. She wants to keep Zeus in check. And I think that's a very interesting way to think about Hera. I think this was much more of a generous modern reading because, we look at Hera as very vindictive most of the time. And we always ask this question, how did women in the ancient world actually go to her and be like, please bless my marriage when she has one of the worst ones in existence?
Yeah.
Uh,
But also like the biggest temples. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Hera was worshipped at Olympia before Zeus was, based on archaeological
Mhm.
evidence we found at that site.
Heck
So,
yeah,
like,
love that.
Samos too.
she the queen for sure.
Mhm.
So I really liked her in this. I forget, like, I know she's, like, in a coma or something the last I read off dealing with all the Chronos stuff gets weird, and I haven't gotten that far yet.
What?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff going on with Chronos after the trial, so, like, again, I need to read
Oh my
on
gosh,
that.
yeah. I love that arc though,
Mhm.
after the trial where Persephone does have to find her way to the underworld, and that's actually when she eats the pomegranate as
Mhm.
well.
Oh.
So it is a very good, and she does it actually like she makes a deal with Erebus pretty much to eat the
Ah,
pomegranate and get the power so that way she can defeat Kronos,
Mhm.
essentially. And then she has really boss bitch move where she saves everyone, and it's
love
great.
it.
Yeah, I'll
Love
definitely
it.
be finishing that later this weekend because I'm like, "Oh, I'm hooked again. I really need to finish this." Uh,
But going back to Vera for a second, I also think it's interesting when I was rereading the opening episodes in preparation for tonight, she kind of has this premonition where it's like she kind of can feel what the other gods or goddesses are
Yes.
kind of feeling.
She's
Mhm.
like
When Apollo rapes
Yeah.
Persephone, like she can feel it and she's crying.
Mhm.
Mhm.
yeah.
She's one of the first to figure it out or kind of put two and two together, right? Or
Mhm.
the first, maybe.
Yeah.
She's the first one to have suspicions, and then, like, a lot of it is, like, I think to show, like, how similar Apollo is to Zeus. Like, Zeus keeps like, I don't know if gaslighting is quite right, but he basically just keeps writing it off. It's like, "You just have this feeling. It's not a real
Yeah.
thing." And, that's very
Okay.
similar to what Apollo does.
This leads me to one of my big questions because I haven't finished the series yet. But does Artemis ever find out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does
Mhm.
she react appropriately?
I don't remember that part. I do know she finds out.
I remember her being really pissed at
Yeah.
Apollo, but I don't remember what she actually does
Okay.
when the truth comes out.
Is it the panel where you actually don't see what they talk about? Where it's like sort of like at a distance or something like that?
So for what Artemis is upset with Apollo with, so she knows Apollo's done something to upset Persephone, and so does their mother Leto.
Mhm.
But Apollo's in complete denial. He's like, I didn't do anything wrong.
Of course.
She said okay, like literally.
Cute.
And he holds to that. And I thought that was another interesting thing about Apollo and saying about like female relationships with men, like female relationships with men who have committed an atrocious act, but that's your son, that's your brother, I could be your best friend, right? And, like, the person doesn't translate into the person who committed this
Right.
horrible action, and I thought that was a really interesting kind of dynamic to explore. So what Artemis is upset with at the end of the trial is the fact that Apollo apparently knew that Zeus was their father for the longest time and never told her.
So that's what she's upset about. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what her focus is on right after the trial for a period of
Alright.
time, to the
Well,
point that, if you haven't seen it, once it comes out that Apollo and Artemis are Zeus's children, they're inducted into the
Mhm.
Olympian family,
naturally,
She
sure.
and they
leaves, yeah.
yeah, and they
Mhm.
both get one wish, and so Apollo wishes that Leto her exile be removed, so Leto gets to come and mess around with people, and then Artemis actually asks to go to the mortal realm to be with Persephone for
Oh,
for the period of time that she's exiled.
Also, I mean, Artemis does actually call out Apollo. I just double checked my notes here. It doesn't happen until like 247 or
Yeah, it's
so,
pretty
and we
late.
don't. It is blurred out, so we don't actually see what she says. But like, she is in tears, and she doesn't want to believe that he actually did this to Persephone for a really long time. And then when she does finally realize it, like she is really upset, but we don't actually get the words that she speaks to
okay.
him.
Yeah.
So
I think that's smart because that's just so hard to imagine, like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, how
Like,
do you have that conversation? What is that conversation? Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I know so I read, like, some of the, like, Wikipedia summations of, like, the rest of the plot that I didn't fully get to, and I know at some point someone, like, hacks Apollo's phone because he took
Hephaestus, yeah.
pictures.
Festus,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
and I feel like
Mhm.
that was actually a really fascinating way to pull this into a modern setting
Yeah. There's
Mhm.
of this, like,
there's a line
yeah,
where Apollo kinda goes to Hephaestus, he's like, "No, it's all fine, like, you're mistaken," and then Hephaestus says something, you're like, "I saw what I saw, man."
Yeah.
Um
yeah, yeah. And because yeah, there's so much in the digital age that we live in, the fact that we can take these pictures and they can store them on phones and put them on the internet and
Oh god.
like Jesus Christ, like it's
Well
really terrifying. And
well,
so I
and
feel like
now
that felt so
AI porn,
oh
revenge
Jesus Christ.
porn.
I can't even
Ugh.
start with that. Like no. But that feels like such a real fear, right? Like that's such a
Mhm.
modern and
Oh, yeah.
real fear that so many women have encountered in their dating lives that I actually really appreciated that that was brought into that.
And that's why Persephone didn't tell a majority of people, like,
Yeah,
even when Hera more or less knew, she, like, couldn't fully admit to it,
right.
until she knew those pictures were gone. I also really appreciate like, Eros is such an interesting character because he also reads as kind of queer, which I do enjoy, or maybe, like,
Mhm.
what we would have said back in the early
Why?
2000s is
Because he likes shopping?
metrosexual. Um, but, like, he's kind of the first one to, like, not only believe Persephone, but also to, like,
Well, he
put
also
put
has, like and because
words.
he
Yeah.
has, like, love empathy powers that he
Yep.
basically he's like, "Oh, like, you had an encounter," and then he sees it like, "That's not" and he's the first one to name it, I think, right? Where he's like,
Exactly.
"That's
Yeah.
not sex, that's
Yeah.
He
rape."
puts the word to
Mhm.
it, and again, I really liked the therapy session that, they show, Persephone going in with Chiron because, like, it also talks about it's like, yeah, it's really great you have a supportive friend like that because there are plenty of people who would sit there, it's like, "Well, what did you say exactly? Like,
Mhm.
what did you do?"
Yeah.
And, like,
Yeah.
she was already doing that to herself, right? Like, versus just someone being like, "Yeah, that was wrong. That is in no way your fault." Yeah, Eros is a little problematic sometimes, but I overall very much like him. And the fact like, it's like, dude, you really I like how stupid they make him about, like, not realizing that Psyche is this disguised nymph hanging out with him all the time.
Right?
And also the fact that like Aphrodite is kind of friends with Psyche at this
Mhm.
point, like she's kind of like, "Oh yeah, no, I actually like her," and then
Yeah, we're
it's
cool.
it's really great.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know if Aphrodite gets more airtime later, but I feel like she's someone that is more playing into a lot of the tropes we see in mythology of like, oh, someone is more beautiful than me. Well, I'm gonna react in
Mhm.
unprecedented levels, basically, that aren't called for. But her like what she sets up with Psyche is kind of fun, and it's just
Mhm.
kind of like, "Oh, I just wanna make sure my son's actually serious about you because he is a mama's boy, but I can let him go if he really likes you, I guess."
I mean, it has
Right.
I don't know, a weird level of familiarity with his mom, or like, I don't know if any of you would ever text your mother that you're at a really great orgy, and then
No.
At least she didn't insist on, like, the address for it to show up herself, because that
True.
would have been both very
I mean,
Aphrodite, but also don't go there, please.
Oh, if
I mean, I
only
get
I
they live in a super sex positive household, but still.
Yeah.
mean,
I was going to hijack if we can. I actually don't have much to say, but other than just call out, I think my hands down favorite character and probably the least problematic, which is Hermes.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
What is the
fair.
line? He says a great line to, like, his first meeting with Persephone. Oh, yeah, he's like, "So, I just called you a nymph." And he's like, "Mhm," and while trespassing, and your mother's like, "Mhm." She's like, "With my terms and conditions out." She's like,
Right.
"Mhm," 'cause he basically had stripped down to, like,
Yeah.
bathe in this pond. And I'm like, "Terms and conditions, that's quite the colloquialism for genitalia."
Right. That's so good.
Right. What does he say? I love three things. Right. My mother, my
I love 2 things. I was like,
yeah,
"Oh, wait, there's a third."
yeah, yeah. He says my mother and my making money.
My mother
But
making
oh
money.
hello,
Oh, and annoying Paula.
Little cat.
who's
Baby.
this?
Oh, this is Marty. He really hates. Oh, jeez. He hates notebooks,
Okay. Yep.
and he really dislikes Greek. Unfortunately,
Oh, no.
Oh, don't we all?
yes.
So a
Oh.
Romanist instead? I don't
Oh no, I was literally trying to sell a student today because she was like, "Should I take Greek or Latin?" And I was like, well, "I'm teaching Greeks, and I only have two students right now, so you got to get the in my Greek class." But
Yeah, no,
I
that
didn't say it
fair
in those
enough.
words. But
That's how you get students in your Greek class, yeah.
lost my train of thought. No, I like his himbo energy. I think
$100%,
he's mhm.
100%.
And he has no real prospects the entire time. Like, there's a lot of romantic storylines going around, both good and bad. Thanatos and Daphne was an interesting one too that started to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, didn't expect I read a summary about that, and I didn't expect that, and that was interesting.
At some level, like I wonder. I mean, I do and I don't. But Erica, you mentioned this is a very Ovidian kind of telling, and I almost wonder because I literally just wrapped up my class on Ovid this semester, and I was like, if we could teleport Ovid and show him this, and would he be like, so many possibilities I haven't even thought to explore, or like would he love this? Like,
Yes.
it's like
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
all of the ships, right? Like,
I feel like he totally would.
Yeah, my personal favorite is androgynous Athena hooking up with with Hestia while
Okay.
both of them running eternal god
And
eternal
Artemis
benefit.
is so salty about it. She's like, "Am I the only one who's actually been doing this?"
so are you telling me that the goddesses of eternal maidenhood is actually a lesbian front?
Yeah, basically it
Yes.
is, as we've come to learn, as Artemis comes to learn, and she's feeling betrayed by everyone. She's like, "Everyone is not telling me the truth, even you 2, and I
That's
fundraise for you."
No.
Oh, yeah, well, and there was one point for Artemis that, like, because Persephone, when she first meets Hades, she's talking was like, "Is this what a crush feels like? I don't know what a crush is or what it feels like. I've never had one before."
Yeah.
And, like, someone jokes, like, Artemis jokes, like, "Oh, how would I know?" And Hermes come or is it no, Eros comes in and says, like, "Oh, you know." And I'm
Yeah.
like, I was wondering if that was gonna be a reference to Orion at all, but I don't think that ever
Ooh.
paid off
Oh,
later.
no, I don't think it does.
Not that I know of, but that would have been really
That would've been
cool.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, even if it had just, again, been shown as, like, a friendship that
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like you could make a really fun storyline where especially because like, the story I know, and I forget the source, is this, like, Orion and Artemis were hanging out all the time. Apollo got jealous, so Apollo challenged his sister to a shooting contest, and then he's like, "Go hit that. I bet you can't hit that thing way on the horizon in the
And
distance."
it's Orion.
And it's Orion in the distance, and Artemis does and kills him. It's like I could see that being kind of a storyline where
Mm.
Apollo wanting to control
Yeah,
the women in his life, like
definitely.
especially their appearances and like who they have relationships with. It's not just Persephone.
Mhm.
And that could have been, it's like, no, this was legitimately just a friendship. And then maybe like she wins the contest, doesn't realize it's Orion, and Orion just disappears from her life. And that's part of the reason, like, why she just doesn't trust men in general. Cause like
Yeah.
they just up and leave you, even when
Yeah.
you're like really good friends.
Uh-huh.
So
That's
maybe
bleak.
missed opportunity plotline
I don't know.
there.
That's bleak as hell, Christy.
I know. I was like, that's so sad.
Have you read this webcomic?
I was like, have you read Greek mythology?
It's not all sunshine and rainbows and cute doggies the whole time, okay?
I'm perpetually living in the Homeric hymn to Hermes, which is just we're stealing cattle and lying at trials.
We're just being little tricksters and having fun.
Yeah, being little
And then-
stinkers all day,
Yeah.
all the time.
All day, all the time.
I also love Artemis's cat named Retsina. I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I
Yeah.
hate the drink. Love the name.
I
For
was
the
like,
cat.
our listeners in Greece don't unfollow us, but because Retsina's nasty.
It's so bad. It's so bad. You
Pine
can't.
resin,
No.
really?
It's too sweet. It's too sweet.
It tastes like tree.
Okay, I don't mind things that taste like tree. I like gin, but like
Yeah, I love
needs
gin.
to not be sweet. Retsina is too sweet.
All right. Is there the only other character I have on my list that we haven't mentioned really is Hecate.
Yeah.
I like that she's a very, again, going back to the bureaucratic system, the fact that she is basically like the planner and the organizer, keeping things on track in the underworld is cool. It's a fun interpretation.
Yeah. I also like that she's a primordial being, and like so she talks about like giving the letter that was addressed to her from Persephone. He's like, "Why'd you do it?" She's like, "I like a little chaos in my life. I just needed a little fun for the day." So I think this is where we can come into our concluding statements, because again, I think I dig this series a lot because I think it used myth as a blank slate to talk about really heavy topics in a modern setting. And I think that's what modern retellings should really try to do. I mean, it shouldn't just do its best to replicate and connect between the past myths, which I mean, arguably this did do, but it was more of like it felt like it was more about relationships,
Mm.
all sorts of relationships. That's what this seemed to be about, not so much about the myth itself. And I liked that. I liked that it's messy and Greek gods, like there's not really any mortals in this, right? It's all immortal deities.
It's just
And
Psyche, really. And yeah.
it's messy, and I think that's a really great way to unpack modern relationships is like, let's just get the messiest bitches in here and see what happens.
I agree. I think about like just the pedagogical value of something, that if you're like going to talk about something with your students, is it going to like point you in a direction of like, what are things we can talk about going into this narrative? And I think there are so many things that you can bring out of Lore Olympus that I agree. I think it's worthy of conversation, which makes me dig it a little bit more than its media would usually.
Fair enough.
You
Fair enough.
stupid Gen Z and their TikToks
I
and their
know, God.
webtoons.
Your
So
2D
old.
animation.
I know. I'm
and-
like sitting on my front porch with my shotgun, yelling, "Get off my lawn!" Always.
Colin, any concluding
Yeah.
thoughts?
I mean, I'm gonna waffle as with all things, but I have like many reservations about it, but at the same time, there are aspects to it that are compelling and a little bit undeniable. Again, I don't know if I can fully endorse it as digging it, And there's lots to sort of pick apart, but at least as kind of like Eli was saying, as like it is an interesting launch pad for conversations. Much more so than, again, to invoke Twilight once more, but like Twilight is the dumb version of this.
Yeah, agreed. And Erica, we'll leave last thoughts or words with you.
Well, first and foremost, I love it because it gave me plenty to write about my thesis. But
Very
also,
important.
yes. And I do also, I've been a TA for the myth class quite a bit, and being able to even just use images from this was really useful because it's a bit more of a modern interpretation. So I think it's easier for students to connect with at times.
Yeah.
But I do think it brings up a lot of really important, heavy modern issues, and they are worth discussing.
Oh yeah.
And I think, I mean, I still dig it. I still quite enjoy the storytelling aspect. I maybe don't agree with all of the decisions that were made, like Demeter not being introduced until like 170 episodes in.
Yeah, I forgot that actually happened,
Yep.
and I'm like, she feels so present in a lot of this, but she's really not.
Yeah, not a big fan of that. But I do think it's a very useful way of thinking about myth and how myth could look in a modern setting with these Greek characters as well.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
it's great.
my thought was like when people told stories about the gods in the past, the idea was to invoke these same sort of discussions that we're having today. Just the discussions would have been a little different, but
Okay. Maybe we should cut this out. But like there's a weird thing I realized about because like Olympus has future technology, but every time they go to the mortal world, they have to like strip down and go back to their classical. So like
Yep.
there's a weird circular time logic happening of that, like smartphones and trains and the internet was always going to be invented, and Olympus is like 2,000 years ahead of the actual mortal world on this one.
I'll take it over Ancient Aliens any day of the week.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's even like how Apollo is in like Star Trek, you know, where he's like, "Oh yeah, we showed up here. We were worshipped as gods because we were these advanced aliens." So, you know, I think it's it's an interesting idea, and I really like that Olympus is so modern in comparison with everything else. You always know where you are in the setting.
Yeah. Yeah, and it kind of plays with time passing with immortality because like instead of the gods being stasis, it's the mortals being stasis in this like ancient time period we think of versus like I think at one point Hades mentions like, oh yeah, I stopped hooking up with a hair in the 80s. And there is like certain
Yeah,
aesthetics that
sometimes
are
when you have
adopted.
flashbacks, they're wearing like period piece clothing,
Yeah.
like they're dressed like it's the 20s or the something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, as a way to show progress and change of the gods as
To
opposed to the
show
mortals
that time had
themselves.
passed.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting because that's kind of reverse of what Erica's paper was at Canvas this year, where the gods are Apollo's the one in stasis. And I'm like, nope, it's the mortals in this imagining of it. So they're just there to die.
God.
Become manual labor.
We
And
didn't even talk about the fucking fact that I was like, we didn't even bring up the thing I forgot about, but like that Hades' whole business runs on fucking slavery. But
yeah,
Oh yeah.
Christ. Oh my God.
they're dead.
we should end the episode on a note being like, the Marxist in me is losing his mind, where it's like his whole wealth is propped up on slave labor. This is fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Put that in the post credits.
I mean, it's very Greek. You know, it's
So
The
when
Greeks
people
didn't
die,
want to die because dying was awful.
apparently when
nothing
you
better to
die,
go
you
to.
just get assigned to a menial job in the underworld where you aren't paid for it, and then Hades just exploits the and reaps the benefit of your labor.
no,
I mean,
hell
that's
is
even-
capitalism.
How much
That's-
French
yeah,
wine
the
have I
answer.
It's
drunk?
in like chaos.
Yep.
It's in it's also in Hades
Hades
Town.
Town,
you know?
yep.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In Hades Town, at least it's like a theme where it's
No, hell is capitalism, and we all and
building
hell
the
is
wall.
here, right?
Why
Like
do we build the
all
wall?
inevitably
We all-
getting there.
are living
To
in
keep
it.
us free, the enemy is poverty, right?
Jesus
Oh.
Christ. Oh.
All right. We should have like a time skip in the episode. We're like,
I know.
and like 30 minutes of Marxist ranting later.
All right. Should I go ahead and close this out then?
Yes, please.
All right. Okay. Special thanks to Erica for joining us this evening to unpack the enticing series of Lore Olympus. Erica, if people would like to learn more about you or your work, where should they go?
Well, I do have a page on the University of Missouri graduate student site that has some different projects that I'm currently working on, a little bit about me and my research, and also my email address if you want to get in touch or recommend a retelling of Demeter and Persephone.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you once again for joining us this evening.
And thank you for having me.
Yeah. And finally, special thanks to all you listeners. We cannot produce episodes like this without your support. That being said, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe if you like what you hear. You can find all our episodes at movieswedig.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to know about our upcoming plans and episode releases, please be sure to follow us on social media under the handle of @movieswedig. We'll talk to you all again soon with another reading. Who knew we could read more than one thing?
More books, bullshit.
Yeah, I say that as Colin is actually going to leave the country for Greece and leave the reading with us. So
I would rather flee the country than read another book. But.
Jesus Christ.
It's like, I think I just want to flee the country, but
I know. Don't we all?
It's not the reason. And with that, y'all, we say bye.
Bye.
This show is produced and edited by your hosts, Colin McCormick and Christy Vogler. Movies We Dig is part of the Memory Collective, a group of creators and educators dedicated to sharing knowledge that is accessible, contextualized, socially conscious, and inclusive. To find more from the Memory Collective, visit collectivemem.com.